Good evening, and welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance and interest to working Rhode Islanders. We hope you enjoy this evening's edition.
Is everyone ready to take the first steps in taking back the teaching profession in our state? Is everyone ready to have their voices heard about the teaching profession in Rhode Island? Let me hear you say yes. Is everyone ready to make sure the teachers' voices are heard? Let me hear you say hell yes. Without further ado, let's get this day started and introduce NEA Rhode Island President Larry Pirtle. Larry!
So close that they can't hear you.
All right. I told the executive committee the other day this is your one and only chance to see me dance to the Black Eyed Peas and the Dropkick Murphys. So thank you for coming. Thank you for spending the day with us, but more importantly, thank you for spending the day with each other. Education is the only profession where those who actually do the work, teachers, ESP, and administrators that do the work are not in control of their profession. Every other profession, the professionals in the field control it. It is time that teachers, ESP, took control of our profession. We get lip service, and there are some, like the Department of Education, who say, I'm listening. There is a difference between listening and hearing. Today is about you. It is about raising our voices and becoming engaged and active. If we are going to be compared to countries such as Finland, Hong Kong, and Canada, then let's act like it. They are countries with strong unions, collective bargaining. Teachers and educators have a real voice, and teacher autonomy. Teachers control their professions. But we must also realize that to take control comes responsibility. We have to be responsible for quality, and frankly, we're ready to take on that responsibility. But to do that, we need engaged members. 500 of you signed up today. Next time we need 1,000, and then we need 2,000. We need your voice. We need unions, we need a strong public education system, and we need reformers who are not in it for the money, but who are in it for the right reasons. And that's you, for the kids and for education. To start off this morning, we have a welcoming video from the president of NEA nationally, Dennis Van Rocco.
I'm Dennis Van Rocco, President of the National Education Association. Welcome to Let Teachers Teach, a groundbreaking forum hosted by NEA Rhode Island. Let me begin by thanking each of you for being here. Today, NEA members face significant challenges that could reshape public education in America. We also have a rare opportunity to transform education from within. Reforming the system can't wait. We must get involved in shaping it and making it better. Before we can change reality, we must be willing to change our own viewpoints and ideas. Our challenge is, how do we see the system of public education, which we are so familiar with, in a new light? I know of one thing that can help us do this: collaboration. The only way for students to succeed is if all the adults involved in public education work together. Top-down mandates won't do it. Scapegoating and blaming educators won't do it. Steamrolling over collective bargaining rights of employees won't do it. There is really only one legitimate option that will work. Give teachers and education professionals real power to improve teaching in our public schools. There are many models of school improvement out there, with proven success. Policymakers who take the time to look at these experiences will see a common thread. They welcome educators' voices and incorporate educators' input. In Diane Ravitch's book, The Death and Life of the Great American School System, she says, quote, Nothing good can come of any reform that teachers do not embrace. We face major obstacles in keeping educators' voices at the forefront of policy debate. I see them in state after state, in city after city. To get to where we need to go, we need to think and act differently. Look at the whole area of hiring teachers, training them, and evaluating them. No one should enter the classroom unless they are truly qualified, and mentoring for new teachers should be the rule, not the exception. The current system of supporting teachers is inadequate, but too many want to just talk about bad teachers. We need to find solutions, not find scapegoats. So how do we hire only the truly qualified? What if we ask teachers to take more ownership of their own profession and create a real evaluation system where the purpose is to improve professional practice, not to punish? These are some of the questions that you will address at this forum. I applaud you for coming together and making the choice to see things in a different light. For Rhode Island students, for our public schools, for our professions, let's keep this great conversation going. This is hard work. It couldn't be more important, and we can't do it without you. Thank you.
Little over a month ago, I had the privilege to attend the first international conference on teaching. And that conference was suggested by Dennis Van Roker and John Wilson and hosted by Secretary Duncan. And I have to tell you that it was, well, not life-changing maybe, it was certainly a terrific experience to hear educators from around the world talk about their challenges and also what works. And we think we have challenges in this country and in this state, and so does in every country. Every country is dealing with immigration, multiple languages, poverty, attracting and keeping people in the profession. But the countries that are successful, the Finlands and so forth, they all have a couple of things in common, as I mentioned earlier. Strong collective bargaining, strong unions, and teachers have a voice through their unions. They also have strong teacher autonomy, and they also have teachers who actually develop and implement their own professional development. Some countries have 150 to 200 hours per year of professional development, but it's developed by teachers in the building. It's not people brought in from the outside, whereas I got a text the other day from someone who was into an hour of professional development and said, it's the same thing we heard last month. And if teachers were developing, I don't think you would hear that. One of the things we wanted to do today was to let you hear from one of the countries who have been held up as being successful, to hear what they did, the challenges they have, and where they're expected to go in the future. And that's the Canadian motto, and I couldn't be happier that Paul Taillefer is here today. He flew in last night from Winnipeg, not exactly a short jaunt to be with us. Paul's like me, and I know neither one of us look it, but we both started teaching in 1977. Both of us have been local presidents. He became head of his provincial association, has been on the board of directors of the Canadian Teachers Federation since 2004. And this summer will take over the duties as the president of the Canadian Teachers Federation. Please give a warm Rhode Island welcome to our neighbor to the north, Paul Taillefer.
Good afternoon. It sounds pretty good from here. How does it sound for you? Not bad? Okay. A little louder? Is that resonating a lot? It's good? Louder?
No, they're saying good in the back. Jay?
They're saying good in the back?
Perfect.
Perfect? Okay, thanks. Well, I've got a number of notes here, and first of all, before starting, I'd like to maybe say that it was incredible to hear what you've been going through in the States. I mean, we look at it from back home and we find that we're very fortunate to be working with progressive government at this point. That can change at a moment's notice, and we realize that. But right now, things are going very well, and I'd like to speak to you about how things are going in Canada. We are very much alike, Geographically, we're very large countries. We have a shared cultural background. We have large multicultural and multilingual democracies. We have federal systems of government. The states and the provinces are in charge of education, though here the federal government tends to be more hands-on, let's say. And we have large, politically active teacher unions. And that, for us, has been key. But we have all these things in common, so if we're so much alike, why are there important differences in the way education and educators are viewed by lawmakers and by the general public? Now, what I'm going to share with you is representative of the general situation insofar as education is concerned in Canada. It's some facts, some polling numbers, some general observations from people outside the teaching profession, why they believe we've been successful. All of you know this, however, even success stories have challenges, and we continue to work to rise up to those challenges. And we know that education is very much a work in progress. Now, one element which draws much attention in the media with governments and parents is country rankings on international tests. Those numbers never give you the whole picture. So I'd like to share some attributes of the Canadian system with you, some of these attributes that have been highlighted by people outside of the system as examples of why we have success on those international tests. The first element is the professionalism of teachers. Over 95% of teachers in the country have at least one undergraduate degree, and of that 95%, a high percentage have two. The teachers and the unions work collaboratively with faculties of education, with ministries of education or departments of education, and school boards in order to make sure that change is implemented in a very, very proper and well thought out, planned way. The ministries of education or departments support teachers with in-service and pre-service programs. Professional development is very much a part of our everyday lives. It's very strong at the front end, and it doesn't diminish throughout. Teacher evaluation systems identify, support, and advance effective teaching. They are not used to punish or to fire. They are used to support teachers, to identify areas of need, and then to offer the proper and correct support. We have mandated teacher evaluation, but what is different from what I'm hearing here is those evaluations are there to perfect the practice of teaching. Okay? So on that first point, we have a highly educated, unionized workforce that collaborates and is supported by government and local school boards. Secondly, Canada's social safety net. One of the things that's important is when the children come to school, they have to be ready to learn. We have a number of programs outside of the regular programs, such as dental programs for children, some within schools. We have approximately a third of our schools that offer free breakfast or lunch programs. That might sound low, but those are schools in disadvantaged areas, and we pretty much cover all of the disadvantaged areas. We work with a lot of volunteers in the community in order to make sure that when the kids come to school, they are ready to learn, that they have the materials that they need, they are fed, they are rested, they are loved. We have also a high immigration rate in Canada, and we have systems of support for immigrant families, And the PISA test results point out that there is almost no gap between the achievement of Native Canadians and people who come from abroad. And so that's probably the most important success story that we have. So we have healthy, alert, engaged students and the resources to support them and to support immigrant families. We create virtually a level playing field. Strong teacher unions with entrenched collective bargaining rights is a third point. Our collective bargaining rights are entrenched in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. This has allowed for mutual collective bargaining, and with school boards, we have some provinces that deal directly with school boards, we have some provinces that deal directly with governments, but collective bargaining is alive and well. We have improved our working conditions, things such as due process, preparation time, class size and composition, maternity and paternity, top-ups. I can go down the list, but all of those things are clearly entrenched in collective agreements. And we have some provincial governments, for example in British Columbia, that have tried stripping some of those provisions outside of the collective bargaining process. We have a case last year that went to the British Columbia Supreme Court, and the court found that this was unconstitutional, and the board had to replace those provisions in the collective agreement. We have Labor Relations Act. We have a law in each province and territory which protects unions, but also holds them accountable for such things as certification and the duty of fair representation. The same law obliges, however, the employer to act in good faith and to be fair and reasonable. It also obliges the employer to respect collective agreements and the bargaining process. We have also, the Supreme Court gave us the RAND formula, which protects union rights re the collection of dues. Unions, and I read an article recently, and I can't remember what state, there was the potential that the union would not be able to collect dues directly, would have to go and collect dues from its teachers. They wouldn't have an automatic checkoff. And when something like that happens, it's very dangerous for union solidarity. We have that automatic checkoff, it is protected. And teacher compensation is based on years of service and professional qualifications. There is no appetite for merit pay in Canada. The greater public doesn't want to talk about it, the politicians don't want to talk about it. The only time it may raise its head is when we read something that comes from down here. So collective bargaining, unions, and formula for remuneration are protected. Something else that's important, the level of respect from public and parents and job satisfaction. Recent polls show that 70% of parents continue to grade their own local schools with an A or a high B. Public continues to support increasing spending on education. Our polling over 20 years is constant on that. When asked whether they would support increased taxation with monies going directly to education, over 65% of responders are in favor. And that's not just parents, that is the general public. While a high percentage of parents may distrust teacher unions, a higher percentage have full confidence in their child's teacher. Individual teachers are always the best spokespeople for the profession. And despite recent teacher polls that suggest that there is a decline in respect, 80% of our teachers now reported that they would go back into the profession if they had a chance, if they had to start over. So the parents support their local schools, they support their children's teachers. Respect is an issue a little bit everywhere, but teachers are highly satisfied with their choice of profession. So that basically sets the table for what some of the conditions are. Larry spoke about the International Summit on the teaching profession, which was held last March. We were happy to be invited to the symposium, and by Arnie Duncan. Arnie had been up to Ontario in the fall. I will tell you that we were a bit fearful that our Premier had invited him to an education conference, and the teachers' unions from across the country immediately banded together to prepare a strategy to counter any of the messaging that was going to come out of that conference, and even planned an opposing, if you will, or an answer to that conference, another conference which will be held next weekend in Toronto. However, when we got there, we were quite surprised to hear him lavish praise upon Ontario and the Canadian system. And we wiped our brows and sort of breathed a sigh of relief. But I can't help but think that if these people are talking, there are ideas that will migrate from one place to the other. Our hope is some of our ideas will migrate here towards the south. Now, why were we invited? Because we score high in PISA. Okay? Since its inception in 2000, we've had about 23,000 students that have taken those tests in 1,000 schools across the 10 provinces and territories. And the Canadian Education Association observed the major good news story behind the latest results, and I'll just read you a quote here. And it talks about high achievement, but more importantly, high equity in education. This means that the impact of socioeconomic status is relatively small, and the gap between the high achievers and the low achievers is also small compared to most other countries. This is the distinguishing feature of Canada's education system, and arguably more important to the social and economic future of young people and Canada as a whole than small changes in overall standing, whether you're third, fourth, or fifth. Andy Hargraves, the Brennan Chair in Education at Boston College, also pointed out in an editorial on the PISA results about performing countries and what the way forward is. And he noted that it's by elevating the teaching profession. And his quote is, "Among the hallmarks of high performers such as Canada and Finland are strong teacher unions and evaluation systems that identify, support, and advance effective teaching." So those are the keys. There is no problem in being accountable for something as long as people are there to help you along the way, to help you reach those goals. We have a number of challenges in Canada. We're really proud that we've closed that achievement gap, but every day, I think you'll agree with me, is a new challenge. Let's look at the 4 pillars that were brought up in the conference, in the summit in New York. And they were recruitment and initial preparation of teachers, teacher development, support, careers and employment conditions, teacher evaluation and compensation, and teacher engagement and education reform. And I'll give you a taste of what we've been doing in those 4 pillars that has really helped us succeed. In education in Canada, a BA is as an undergraduate requirement, a minimum 4 years of teaching and 1 or 2 years of teachers college is what all of the teachers or most of the teachers have. 30% of the teachers have master's degrees, but that's not tied to compensation. That doesn't mean that teachers don't like to learn. Teachers are highly involved in professional development that's directly related to the work they're doing in the classroom. They love to learn, they're lifelong learners. Teacher candidates in Canada are required to submit to National Criminal Record Check. When this came out, we were pretty upset and fought tooth and nail not to have it. We were unsuccessful. But in the ensuing years, we noticed that it had very positive results as far as boosting public confidence in the profession. So sometimes you lose, but you win. As far as professional development is concerned, it is important, recognized, and supported by provincial and territorial governments. We know that changes in education are fast-paced. There's not one profession that has to face a pace of change that teachers do. And there's no problem with that, provided you are supported through that change. And that's important. It also helps sometimes if your state or federal or provincial government can sort of slow down the pace of change. We've been trying to work on that in Ontario without much success, but change is good, and we're working with the government in order to implement it. Teachers upgrade and update their skills through professional development. An increasing number of teacher unions in Canada work directly with faculties of education to develop programs on special education, individualized teaching, discipline, anything that we feel our members need in the classroom. We work with the faculties of education to make sure that teachers who are coming into the profession have a leg up. Some teacher unions are even accredited as professional development providers, and the courses that they offer are recognized as university credit courses. And those courses are tailored specifically to their members' needs. In many jurisdictions, teacher unions have won major provisions for professional development through collective bargaining. For example, in one collective agreement that covers one province, teachers are allowed $1,000 a year to work towards self-directed professional development. Not what your board wants you to take, not what your principal wants you to take, but what you feel you need in order to meet the challenges you have in your classroom. We also have in some collective agreements money that's been put there to help implement professional learning communities, to give time within the school days for colleagues to get together and to work to help raise the level of student achievement. The battle for our professional space is a battle that will never end. We need to stop the erosion of that professional space. Teachers are the best people to understand what the needs of the students in their classroom is. Okay? We don't need to bring in experts from outside the teaching profession to tell us that. We need to we need to work with our experts. We need to work with our experts. Does anyone speak French in the room? Okay. There's an expression that we have, nul n'est prophète dans son propre pays. No one is a prophet in his own country. Okay? We have experts right here in this room. Let's not look elsewhere. Let's use the expertise that we have for the benefit of our students. Governments play a big role in how this rolls out. We in Ontario, for example, lived a dark 8 years under a Conservative government where there were cutbacks, there was no consultation, professional development was dictated, and teachers were not part of the equation. We changed government in 2003 and went to a Liberal government, and the pace of change increased, but the pace of consultation increased also. The ability to work in consultation with government to get things done. The need for teacher expertise to inform policy became evident. Self-directed learning, professional development, money to actually support teachers in the work they have to do. It's there when the political will is there. Teacher development support, careers, employment conditions. Teachers who are employed by the public school system in Canada are eligible for membership in teacher organizations. I think that it's important to know that every teacher in Canada belongs to a teaching organization. There are some provinces where you can opt out of the union, but you still have to pay union dues, because we do not want to take away the effectiveness of our unions. 3 provinces in Canada exclude principals from other unions, and that is by legislation. The government, in order to try to break the will of the union and the teaching profession, tried to create a us and them situation in the schools. It has, in a sense, worked. We are having a little more difficulty in the schools where teachers are no longer part of the unions, but we are working hard with those principals associations to find common ground and to work on projects and to make them part of our push for a larger professional space for teachers. It's important also to have the principal in the school as the lead teacher in the school. I know that a lot of jurisdictions sort of bought into the idea coming out of Australia in the 1990s from Daniel Brown about site-based management, where anyone in the school can be where anyone can come in and be a school leader, you know, a CEO of a company, an editor of a magazine. Oh, I think Kathy Black, chief of New York schools, did that, but she only lasted 3 months. We need to have people that understand the education system working in the education system. Benefits are very important. We have a Medicare system, but on top of that, we have topped that up through collective bargaining so that our teachers are very healthy and very well taken care of on the benefit side of things. Retirement plans. I know that a lot of retirement plans have been under attack. We still hold on to defined benefit plans in Canada, and all of our retirement, I see someone who understands defined benefit much better than defined contribution. And so all of those are protected. We work with the governments of each jurisdiction to make sure that we protect those plans, and we try to keep them at bay from all that discussion that's going on in the general public about moving to defined benefit plans or even getting rid of any retirement provisions. Teacher evaluation and compensation was another of the pillars, and a very important one. In a lot of our jurisdictions, we have an evaluation process, as I noted, and it's cyclical between 1 to 3 and 1 to 5 years. Nobody, when we put these in, nobody put them in so that everyone got evaluated on the first year. That is a ridiculous concept. It was, and I hope that that works out well, or you can change that. But I think that it's important that these evaluations that are put into place are a process, not a checklist. And you work with your lead teacher, your principal, okay? And you try to look at how the supports that you need in order to develop your teaching skills. You are assigned a mentor in the early years of teaching, a colleague with more experience who will help you, okay? And there is professional development available to you in order to deal with problem areas. Nowhere will they threaten you with job loss if you have a first unsuccessful evaluation. The first thing they do is step in to help you. And I think that that's important, because if they hire you as a teacher, they must have thought that you were good. It just means that you need some particular help at that moment, and it's their responsibility as an employer to give you that help. Compensation is also important. The point was made this morning, I can't remember, I think it was in the interview that we did outside, that compensation is an important thing that we don't talk about enough. Generally speaking, teachers' salary schedules for us are a combination of post-secondary education and years of experiences, and there are a number of additional allowances that you can get depending on whether you're a department head or you have a particular portfolio that you have to carry. But depending on the jurisdiction, an entry-level salary can range from $36,000 to $59,000. And at the top end, teachers will make from $54,000 to $92,000. And so the teachers are well paid. They are well remunerated at the beginning, and they are well paid throughout their career. And it's important because we need to be able to attract the best candidates from universities. When people look at the job market, they have to consider that teaching as a profession is a viable choice for them. And you're not going to do that by underpaying. Like I said before, there is no merit pay in Canada. It rears its ugly head occasionally when a news story pops up in a national paper. Conservative think tanks sort of try to run with it for a bit because they think it'll get some traction, but we can parade out a whole bunch of research that shows there is no clear benefit in merit pay. And there's no appetite, and this is good, there's no appetite with provincial and territorial governments to deal with the issue because there's no appetite in the general public to deal with the issue. They do not begrudge us the working conditions that we have, and that's important. That support from parents is very important. Now, teacher engagement and education reform, and this is where I think we've made great strides in the last little while, because it's been proven over and over and over again. If teachers are involved, if they readily embrace the changes and improvements and reform in education, it works. It cannot be top down. You have to let the experts inform those decisions, and you are the experts. We talk to ministries of education, we talk to governments. We don't agree on everything. You know, we win our fair share, we lose our fair share, but it's a process of collaboration, it's a professional process, and there's respect. And that's what legislators have to do. They have to respect the expertise of the teachers, and they have to consult them if they want things to move forward. Working together is the key. It's as simple as that. As far as another element under teacher engagement and education reform, the social support, as I mentioned before, is very important. The social safety net is an important part of our national fabric. Our social fabric values education and teachers. Okay, the teachers and education are highly respected. Our population prizes the public good, and it doesn't abandon the weak in its effort to become economically stronger. When we talk about the economic crisis, they didn't run out and say, let's cut in the schools. We have guaranteed reinvestment in our schools. Next year, all the budgets came out for next year in all the provinces and territories who are facing a financial crisis as you are here, albeit not as grave, have made concessions elsewhere and have protected public education. I talked to you about how parents support schools. They support particularly the school in their community. But those parents, okay, would favor increased funding for their provinces or territories' public elementary school or secondary school 9 out of 10 times. 9 out of 10 times when we polled them, if we need more money, they would be willing to pay more money, because we have been able to get the message out there as far as the value of public education in a knowledge-based society and public education to create a strong civil society. They told us that they would like us to spend the money in the following ways. Reducing class size was their #1 priority. Improving curriculum was a close second, and also the idea of special needs children came in high. So they do want targeted spending, but those targets are often our challenges, and they align very well with what we want to do. We've conducted polling for almost a decade, and the results through the years have been similar. Canadians believe in public education, they believe that it should be better funded, and they are willing to pay for that. So, in summary, Canada at this point is in an enviable position in the eyes of the world on how it looks after its citizens, young, old, rich, and poor. Our social fabric and our values have created a positive environment for learning and for teaching. And we're very happy that the congruence of things that have come together have led us to this point. We have a strong commitment to a public school system. There is only a very modest private sector in education in Canada. So modest that we don't even think about them. We have a strong social welfare and public health system. We have broad safety nets to protect the youngest and most vulnerable. We believe that these are the things that are truly propelling our strength in education. We value teachers. We insist on a professional program of university-based training for all public school teachers. Working conditions are favorable with good facilities, good pay, wide availability of professional development, self-directed professional development in many cases, and discretion for teachers to make their own professional judgments. Canada has been historically known for its culture of cooperation and inclusiveness, and that's helped us to work with our provincial and territorial governments. But one of the things that I mentioned before is taxation. You cannot make the system work without money. And I'd like to read you a quote that John Ralston Saul, he was the husband of our Lieutenant Governor 2 times past. He was a strong champion of public schools in Canada, and he eloquently describes one aspect of the promise and the potential of public education. In a convocation address to the students at Simon Fraser University in British Columbia, he argued that in a country built upon immigration, such as ours, and to a great extent yours, our ability to make new Canadians part of the whole is perhaps our greatest success story. Why we have succeeded where so many other countries have either failed or continue to labor with great difficulty? Because from the 1890s on, our principal system for forming citizens has been our public schools. Public education is the great secret of our immigration success. The success of our immigration brings Canada much of its success, social, political, and economic. Yes, there is a financial cost attached. It's called paying taxes. And paying taxes in a democracy is the most eloquent and sophisticated way we have to demonstrate our personal success. Taxation is the egalitarian method by which we have educated ourselves with dignity. And we need governments to understand that once we have those tax dollars in the coffers, that public education is the key to growth and the key to the future of any nation. So I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. Everything that I've heard here today are things that we've talked about, are talking about. The challenges are constant, but you have incredibly enlightened leadership. You are on the right track. You want to be part of the process. You want to engage politicians. You want to engage the public in a discussion. You need to take charge of that professional space and take the place that belongs to you. You are the experts. You are the future of public education in America. I thank you for your time.
want to thank Paul, and I'll tell you the difference between friends and the last time I had a chat with the commissioner, she told me I was misinformed, and Paul said that we're enlightened, so I'd rather much be enlightened than misinformed. I'm going to ask Colleen, as a member of the Board of Regents, and as you know, the Rhode Island Federation has been certainly active on evaluation, especially in Providence. So, Colleen?
Thanks, Larry. Good afternoon, everybody. I sit on a lot of panels like this, as many of you know, and oftentimes have forums. The Board of Regents, for example, will have a forum where we solicit testimony. And one of the things I was thinking about while we were all talking this morning, and I want to make sure that, you know, I'm speaking to you as the Director of Professional Issues from the Federation of Teachers, but with that experience of wearing the Regents hat. It is so important for you to use that voice. We heard from Dennis Van Rokel, we heard from folks who spoke today, that we need to take control of our profession, and we need to use our voice to express our professional opinion. But I would also suggest that there's another player involved here, that the legislators, the policymakers, the general public, the media, they have to listen. We need the opportunities to speak, like the opportunity that you have today, but it is also critical that our public officials listen and hear what it is that we have to say. And so I really applaud the NEA for bringing you folks together this way, because I think that collectively and through our organizations, the Federation of Teachers, NEA Rhode Island, that not only are you speaking individually, but you're speaking collectively. So that's one of the things that I wanted to not only applaud you for, but make sure we hold each other accountable for speaking out, but in the ways that we can, hold our elected officials and others accountable for listening, hearing, and acting on the kinds of things that we bring to the table. Absolutely critical. Heard a lot about evaluation today, and as Larry was saying, the Federation of Teachers has been involved in an initiative with 6 of our urban locals on developing a high-quality evaluation system. We were at it, quite frankly, before the current administration was working on this, because we thought we needed to step out front and do what you heard your president talk about today, really try to take control, take leadership on the issue. But it hasn't meant that it's easy. We all know that we are faced with, and I think there are a lot of good things about moving forward to retooling our evaluation systems. And there is a set of standards in Rhode Island that we're all being held accountable for. Our innovation group is working toward those standards, and your local districts are either dealing with them now or are going to have to deal with them as the implementation timeline comes near. I heard lots of very important things being said in your small groups today, lots of them behind us on the screen. One of the things that I'm thinking about that you can do as you go forward from this assembly is to make sure that your voice gets heard in all of the locals that you represent. The Department of Education, the Board of Regents passed a set of regulations saying that every district must implement an evaluation system that meets those standards, and that's work that's going on now. I think you're all aware that the Department of Education has created its own model evaluation system. What I'm going to suggest is that our voice needs to be heard, not beyond, if you will, the forums that are held for us to hear about, the opportunities for us to sign in and say that we've been to a session where somebody's told us about that evaluation system. And so I've got, I guess, a request for you or a charge. There is an assumption being made right now that every district that signed on to Race to the Top has committed to adopting the Rhode Island model evaluation system. And I want to remind you that The adoption of an evaluation system takes place at the local level through collective bargaining. Now, I have raised that issue at the Board of Regents just a few times, both in large-scale conversations and one-on-one conversations with the commissioner. There are a lot of people in this room. You represent a lot of Rhode Island districts. And so I'm going to suggest that working with your local leaders, you remind your superintendent and your school board that the process for adopting the Rhode Island model, or a model that meets the educator evaluation system standards, goes through your local collective bargaining process, and I assure you that that will give you the opportunity to say the kinds of things I heard you say in your small groups, and make sure that when you in fact meet those Board of Regents standards, that they will have your local stamp, your voice, and your input. But if we don't demand that that's the way we adopt and then implement that evaluation system, we will miss that opportunity. So that's what I'm going to ask you to do. It's going to be extraordinarily powerful if we do that. And by the way, we agree with that set of standards. We agree with what's been said about how important evaluation is, and that it should be used not in the punitive way, but in a way that supports professional growth and increased student achievement. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Tony.
I was asked a while back, well, if you had to develop a system, you say you want teachers involved, how would you do it? And I said, well, I have a suggestion. Just take the last 10 Rhode Island Teachers of the Year, put them in a room, and let them come up with a system, and I am confident that when they walk out, that will be a good system. And I know that while their voices have been listened to, they have not been heard, and I'm glad that Barbara's here to give us a little perspective, her perspective as the 2009 Rhode Island Teacher of the Year. Barbara?
Hi. Can everybody hear me all right? I could probably just use my teacher voice and you could hear me, but that's okay. I teach middle school. What I'd like to talk about is what I heard today from teachers in this room and teachers in my group. I heard the word collaboration an awful lot, and I don't feel we're getting that in this state. And we need to start using our voice. You've heard teacher voice, we need to start speaking up. We are the experts, we are the people in the classroom, we are the people with the degrees, the experience, the relationships with our students. That's what counts. We need to start being vocal. The other part that I heard is in regard to the evaluation system. I would not want my child's entire educational career based on a test score. A test score. Neither do I want my career based on one test score. We know children are more than a test score. They are not numbers, they're not a little blip on my database. Any teacher worth their salt can tell you about every child in their classroom without a database or a test score. We are the experts. We need to start acting like the experts, and we need to start talking like the experts. Unfortunately, that means we need some backup. We need some help from NEARI. We need those talking points. We need the statistics that we can use the way that they use them against us. We need to start using that. You have to fight statistics with statistics. We're not used to doing that. We're used to talking to children. We need to take it up a level, and we all need to be responsible for promoting our profession for the wonderful profession that it is. Without us, there is no democracy. There are no United States citizens. And I think we need to look at ourselves and stand proud and stand up to our profession. Thank you.
think there's anything Frank will disagree on with that.
Not a bit.
It really, again, a pleasure to introduce, and I don't want to keep calling him the new president, but the Federation's in good hands in Rhode Island with Frank at the leadership, and I'm really happy again that he was able to join us today. New president of the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, Frank?
Thank you for the invitation to be here today, Larry, and I look forward to continuing working with you. And I don't have to continue to state this, but we are in for the fight of our lives, and we have to do it collectively and collaboratively amongst our two organizations in order to survive this and to move forward and to thrive. And I want to thank all of you, particularly for coming here today, because it's a credit to you as professionals and what you do as we enter Teacher Appreciation Week. I know many of you don't feel very appreciated these days, so I want to tell you that, and I'm sure Larry feels the same way, we think you guys do the best job, the most difficult job in an admirable way every day, and you never get nearly the recognition that you deserve. So give yourselves a round of applause and one another. And one of the points I want to make is that we all have to become better advocates for ourselves, whether it's in our schools or our communities. We don't do enough to support one another or to support our profession. You all have sat around the dinner table or stood in line at the deli at Stop and Shop or sat on the sidelines at the soccer field, and we get vilified in almost every forum we go, and we need to do a better job of defending ourselves and really promoting ourselves as professionals and highlighting the things that we do, because if we don't do it for ourselves, no one's going to do it. If we don't do it for ourselves, it's going to be done to us. So once again, thank you so much for the invitation, Larry, and looking forward to working with all of you, and our organizations will work very hard together on every front to do what's best for the students of Rhode Island and for the professionals who work with them.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you for joining us for this evening's edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen 3 times each week here on Channel 14. Join us on Tuesdays at 7 p.m., Thursdays at 8 p.m., and Saturdays at 5 p.m.